I want to paint for you three portraits. I'd like you to keep these in your mind as we talk a little bit together today. The first is just outside the tiny village of Coton in Cambridgeshire, England. I used to get on my bike when I was going to school, and on days when it was sunny and nice, which was about 3 out of the year, I'd get on that bike and I would try to find some new place to land. Oh, I remember it was by happenstance on this morning that I passed by a thatched roof restaurant that had been there for a very long time and kept going until I found the tiny town of Coton. It was out of a storybook. There was one church and one school, and they were both in the middle of town that only had 2 roads. But it was the countryside that stunned me the most. As I rode along those tiny streets, I came upon what looked to me like what Sting had in mind when he sang about fields of gold. I took a picture, which you see here. I remember sitting in a lecture hall, trying to stay awake in an especially boring class, daydreaming about riding to Coton, wind in my hair, staring at fields of gold. I've already told you what song came to my mind when I saw this view. But I also want to tell you, as I carried my lunch and I sat down under a shade tree and stared out at the golden fields, what verse came to mind. Jesus said to them, "My food is to do the will of him who sent me and to accomplish his work. Do not say there are yet 4 months and then comes the harvest. Look, I tell you, lift up your eyes. The fields are white to harvest." One day I was sitting there all alone, and my thoughts of the beauty of this moment turned to sadness. Every golden strand represented a person lost in the sea of thousands, perhaps millions, living their life without knowing Christ my Lord. How many of them are weighed down with the burdens of life, choked out by the difficulties of life, facing the pains of life and in fear of the unknown? How many of them would find a new lease on life, a joy beyond compare, were they to find the peace of Christ, the hope of resurrection, and the truth of the gospel? Let me paint a second portrait for you. This time you're standing at the edge of the shoreline. The sky is black with a menacing darkness. The sea is rough and the tempest tossed. And you can hear the sound of a giant ocean liner out in the distance. Who knows how many people are on board? You imagine what it must feel like to be alone at sea in the midst of a storm, shrouded in darkness, knowing the rocky cliffs lie somewhere out in the horizon. And were you to hit it, you would surely face a bitter end. But all of a sudden, like a gift from the heavens, a bright and radiant light shines through the darkness. A tiny lighthouse, previously unseen, leverages far more than its weight in making visible not only what dangers lie ahead, but serving as a beacon calling all ships to safety. And a verse comes to mind. "Send out your light and your truth," Psalm 43:3. "Let them lead me. Let them bring me to your holy hill and to your dwelling." And as you stand there on the shore, rejoicing that all of these souls on board will find safety and shelter, your mind goes to shorelines with no lighthouse, smaller boats too far out to see the light that's shining. And you wonder, what will happen to them? What will become of them? A third portrait for you this morning. This time, let's let Caravaggio paint it for us. The scene is a table in the town of Emmaus. Those seated there have just been given the bread by the bread of life, risen from the dead, though they know not who he is. And there's a moment when he vanishes from their presence And that's when Caravaggio, in his mind's eye, took this picture. Just before he vanishes. 400 years have passed, but the scene is as vivid as the day it was painted. Look at their body language. If you listen closely, in the silence, you can almost hear them saying, "Were not our hearts burning within us?" That's what it's like to have your eyes opened. That's what it's like to break bread with the Master. How many has Christ invited to the table? Which of his children made in his image does he not call? What soul does he not want? Who should miss out on this extraordinary moment, left to fend for themselves in the midst of the tempest, standing alone and lost in a sea of gold? Not one. No, not one. But who will go tell them? Who's going to bring Christ to them? Who will sacrifice so that others may live? 3 portraits, 1 question. What will you do with the light that you've been given? Will you answer the call? Jesus said to them, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And behold, I am with you always, even to the end of the age."
Worship you.